On the eve of the Sasanian rise, the world was divided among four great powers. In the west stood the Romans. Western and Central Asia were ruled by the Parthians and the Kushans, and in the distant east lay the Han Empire. Among these four powers, the Kushan Empire is the least familiar to modern audiences due to the scarcity of surviving sources, yet it was by no means less significant than its rivals. In 165 BC, the Yuezhi tribes, who lived in the region of Tunhuang in China, were forced to migrate under pressure from Xiongnu attacks. Crossing the Gobi Desert, they settled in the Ili Valley, but once again came under Xiongnu assault. This drove them further west, and by around 138 BC, they had established themselves in Sogdiana. The lands brought under the control of the Yuezhi were divided among 5 principalities, the strongest of which was known as Kushan. Between 45 and 60 AD, Kujula Katvasis defeated the other Yuezhi chieftains and established the Kushan Empire, centered in the city of Bactra. Thus, a major new power arose east of the Parthian realm. As the Kushans continued to expand their dominion, they became a serious threat to Parthian interests in Central Asia. Between 127 and 150 AD, Kanishka the Great ascended the Kushan throne. Exploiting the Parthians' preoccupation in the west, he succeeded in seizing the important cities of Herat and Merv. The loss of these large and prosperous centers dealt a severe blow to the economy of the Parthian Empire and weakened the standing of the Arsacid dynasty among the noble Parthian houses. The Kushans pressed on, conquering the Indo-Parthian kingdom, which had been a valuable ally of the Parthians. This delivered yet another heavy blow to the Arsacid state. With control over the major commercial hubs of Central and South Asia, the Kushans had become a formidable rival to the Parthian Empire. During the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD, simultaneous attacks by the Romans in the west and the Kushans in the east steadily reduced Parthian territory. Some historians believe that the Romans and Kushans may have coordinated their actions to destroy the Parthian Empire from both sides, though no evidence exists to confirm this theory. By 224 AD, when Ardashir Babakan and Artabanus IV faced one another on the plain of Hormozdgan, the Kushan Empire was itself suffering from the wider crisis of the 3rd century. Historical evidence suggests that the Kushans, like the Parthians, were embroiled in a civil war. The western territories, including Balkh, Merv, and Kabul, appear to have been under the control of Vasudeva II, while the eastern regions were ruled by Kanishka III. Despite their internal conflict, the Kushans remained the greatest danger on the eastern frontier of the Iranian plateau, and addressing the situation in the east became one of Ardashir Babakan's primary objectives. Based on the inscription of Shapur I at Bishapur, we know that on April 28, 224 AD, Ardashir succeeded in slaying Artabanus IV at the Battle of Hormozdgan. What followed, however, is shrouded in uncertainty. The lack of consistency among ancient historians, combined with contradictions between their accounts and the evidence of numismatics, has further complicated matters. Scholars attempting to reconstruct Ardashir Babakan's campaigns after his victory at Hormozdgan have been forced into endless conjecture. Yet an examination of the surviving coins from this period provides several fixed dates that may help clarify the sequence of events. In 227 AD, the last coin of Artavasdes was minted in Ecbatana, indicating Sasanian control over the city and likely the death of Artavasdes. In 228 AD, the final coin of Vologases VI of the Arsacid line was struck in Seleucia, or Babylon, marking the end of the Parthian dynasty. Some sources also state that 226 AD was the year Ardashir entered Ctesiphon. It was during these same years that Ardashir succeeded in conquering the eastern territories, though determining the precise extent of his dominion in the east is as difficult as tracing the route of his campaigns. To resolve this, historians look to the inscription of Shapur I, which lists the courtiers and kings who served under Ardashir. From the available sources, it appears that after the death of Artabanus IV at Hormozdgan, his son Artavasdes fled to Ecbatana, while Ardashir advanced into Mesopotamia and, in 226 AD, triumphantly entered Ctesiphon. There, Ardashir was crowned and formally proclaimed himself Shahanshah of Iran. To commemorate his coronation, he ordered the carving of a new rock relief at Nakshi Rostam, near the tombs of the Achaemenid kings. His choice of this site may have been deliberate, an attempt to forge a symbolic link between his own dynasty and the legacy of the Achaemenids. In this rock relief, Ardashir receives the royal diadem from Ahura Mazda. He intends to show all who gaze upon the carving that his kingship has been sanctioned by the gods. Beneath the hooves of Ardashir's horse lies Artabanus IV, the last Parthian king of kings. Beneath the hooves of Ahura Mazda's horse lies Ahriman, the destructive evil spirit. Ardashir thus equates his own victory over Artabanus with Ahura Mazda's triumph over Ahriman. A particularly important feature of this relief is the inscription carved on the chest of Ardashir's horse. In it, Ardashir introduces himself as follows.
This is the figure of the Mazda-worshipping lord, Ardashir, Shahanshah of Iran, who is of divine lineage, son of the Lord Papak, the king.
Ardashir's choice of the title Shahanshah of Iran is especially striking. Prior to this, the name Iran appears only in the Avesta, where it refers not to a political state, but to a mythical land. In the first chapter of the Vendidad, Iran is described in these words.
The first and best of the lands and countries which I, Ahura Mazda, created was Ērānshahr. I have made every land dear to its people, even though it had no charms whatever in it. Had I not made every land dear to its people, even though it had no charms whatever in it, then the whole living world would have invaded Ērānshahr.
In Zoroastrian cosmology, the world is divided into 7 regions, or Kashvar. The central region, Kvanirath, was equal in size to the other 6 combined. Ērānshahr was located within Kvanirath, the sacred place where Ormazd created the primordial Ox Evdad, Gaiomard the first human, the first animals, and all plant life. By naming his dominion Iran, Ardashir projected the sacred cosmology of the Avesta onto the borders of his newly established empire, casting his realm as the earthly reflection of the holy world described in scripture. After capturing Ctesiphon, Ardashir advanced towards Seleucia. Upon the fall of the city, Vologases VI was forced to flee to Babylon, where he apparently died in 228 AD. Once inside Seleucia, Ardashir ordered the ruined metropolis, devastated earlier by Roman attacks, to be rebuilt and renamed Ve Ardashir. To bring Mesopotamia entirely under his rule, Ardashir needed to eliminate the semi-independent kingdom of Hatra, which dominated the northern regions of Mesopotamia. Hatra, Karasin, Dura Europos, and Palmyra were four major commercial cities in Mesopotamia and Syria, whose inhabitants were predominantly Arabs. Karasin in southern Mesopotamia had long been a semi-autonomous kingdom within the Parthian Empire. By the mid-2nd and early 3rd centuries AD, Hatra too had emerged as a semi-independent state, while Palmyra held a similar status within the Roman Empire. The Arab merchants of these four cities had successfully established alternative trade routes linking their communities. This network allowed them to conduct commerce beyond the oversight of both the Parthian and Roman governments. Their principal commodity was silk, the most coveted luxury product of the ancient world. By bypassing Parthian intermediaries, these merchants wrested control of the silk trade to Rome from the hands of Parthian and Persian merchants. This granted them immense wealth and turned their cities into significant regional powers. Ardashir, fully aware of this situation, sought to restore the royal monopoly over the silk trade and thereby place economic pressure on the Roman Empire. To achieve this, he aimed to dismantle these semi-independent Arab polities by any means necessary. He had already destroyed the kingdom of Karasin during his earlier campaign in Meshan. Now, Hatra was next. In 227 AD, Ardashir departed from Ardashir with his forces and laid siege to the city of Hatra. In 227 AD, Ardashir's forces reached the walls of Hatra. He immediately ordered his engineers to prepare the siege engines for an assault on the city's defenses. Although the sources do not specify the exact tools and machines employed by the Sasanians during the siege, comparisons with other accounts of Sasanian assaults on fortified cities allow us to infer the equipment likely used. It appears that the Sasanians deployed siege towers to counter the archers positioned atop the walls, while simultaneously tunneling beneath the fortifications in an effort to bring them down. Thus, the siege towers were set in motion, engaging the defenders stationed along the ramparts, while the engineers advanced their tunnels toward the base of the city walls. Events unfolding in media, as well as the support offered by Khosrow, the Arsacid king of Armenia, to Artavasdes, son of Artabanus, placed Ardashir in a state of concern. He was determined, therefore, to bring Hatra under his control as swiftly as possible. Through persistent effort, the Persians eventually succeeded in collapsing a section of Hatra's wall. At Ardashir's command, a detachment of Persian infantry advanced to enter the breached city. The Arab inhabitants of Hatra, anticipating the possible collapse of that section of the wall, had stationed themselves there in advance, awaiting the Sasanian assault. As the Persians reached the breach, they immediately charged toward the Arab defenders. Following their prearranged plan, the Arabs slowly withdrew deeper into the city, drawing the Persians after them. Believing that they were facing a weakened opponent, the Persians increased their numbers and pressed forward, eventually succeeding in entering the city. It was then that the defenders unleashed the deadliest phase of their strategy. From every direction, they launched a sudden and overwhelming counterattack against the Persian troops inside the breach. Meanwhile, a contingent of Arab fighters swiftly occupied the collapsed section of the wall, preventing the Persians inside the city from retreating and blocking any reinforcements from coming to their aid. The Persian forces trapped within the city fought with remarkable courage, but to no avail. With each passing moment, more of them fell, while the Arabs intensified their assault. In the end, the defenders succeeded in annihilating every Persian soldier who had entered Hatra. Having suffered heavy losses, Ardashir judged that continuing the siege would be unwise, especially since he faced the prospect of confronting Parthian forces in Media. He therefore ordered his troops to abandon the siege and withdraw. The defenders of Hatra, who had previously repelled 2 Roman emperors, once again emerged victorious, this time forcing the Persian troops under Ardashir to withdraw. With the remnants of his army, Ardashir was compelled to march toward Media. The king of Armenia, Khosrow, himself of Arsacid lineage, had taken up support for Artavasdes, son of Artabanus. Ardashir therefore needed to respond without delay. Although the exact course of the conflict between the Arsacids and the Sasanians in Media remains unclear, numismatic evidence suggests that in 227 AD, Ardashir defeated Artavasdes and seized Ecbatana. Following this victory, Ardashir led a campaign into Armenia, but without success. According to Armenian sources, the rugged and mountainous terrain of Armenia was ill-suited to the maneuvering of the Persian heavy cavalry, preventing Ardashir from gaining the upper hand against Khosrow's forces. After his unsuccessful campaign in Armenia, Ardashir devoted the years 227 to 230 AD to conquering the northern and eastern regions of Iranshahr. His objective was unmistakable: to reclaim the major commercial centers of eastern Iran. By seizing these territories, Ardashir could not only strengthen the economic foundations of his rule, but also demonstrate his supremacy over the Arsacid dynasty to the other Parthian noble houses. Fortune favored him. The Kushan Empire had fallen into civil war, and Ardashir seized the opportunity. He defeated Vasudeva II, ruler of the western Kushans, and annexed his territories. According to Al-Tabari, the kings of Turan and the Kushans became tributaries of Ardashir. This may suggest that he also succeeded in turning the eastern Kushans into a client state, though the evidence for such a claim remains uncertain. Ardashir appointed one of his sons or brothers, also named Ardashir, as king of the Kushans in Merv, while he himself returned to Pars. Fully aware of the strategic value of commerce in the Persian Gulf, Ardashir immediately ordered the construction of warships, laying the groundwork for his next campaign. Once the necessary preparations were complete and the vessels had been built, Ardashir led his forces across the Persian Gulf and launched an attack on Bahrain. Sinatruces, the Arsacid vassal of the region, gathered his forces in preparation for resistance. Ardashir swiftly landed in Bahrain and laid siege to Sinatruces. After some time, Sinatruces found himself in desperate shortage of provisions. Unable to supply his troops with the food they needed, and crushed under the pressure of starvation, he finally threw himself from the ramparts of the city, bringing his life to an end. Immediately after securing Bahrain, Ardashir ordered the construction of military and commercial harbors. He founded the city of Pasar Ardashir, also known as Al-Kut, and then returned to Ctesiphon. Within just 6 years, Ardashir had succeeded in recapturing many of the major commercial cities that had slipped from Parthian control. With these territories regained, he now possessed the economic resources needed to confront the old nemesis of the Persians, the Roman Empire. By this time, Ardashir had already challenged and defeated two of the four great powers of his age, the Kushans and the Arsacids. Now, the turn belonged to Rome, which had seized key commercial centers in northern Mesopotamia from Persian influence. In the next episode, we will examine the first confrontation between the Sasanians and the Romans,